What if one word like soon or ASAP was costing your team hours of confusion? Today, we're declaring a vague language veto. That's right, vague language veto, and replacing fuzzy phrases with precise leadership language. Because clarity isn't just a nice to have, it's our competitive advantage. This is the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast, and I am your host, John Espinosa. I help retain and hire your best employees, and we do that through building high-performance teams. Thanks for joining me today. On this episode, we're going to talk all about why we need to stop saying words like ASAP or familiar. We're going to go through 10 words we need to eliminate out of our language. I use them, trust me, I have them on a sticky. And we'll talk about applications because this is a practical podcast. I'm going to make sure you guys have some good takeaways today. And one of them is quit using these 10 words. Then we're going to get into what we need to replace them with. So that's going to be our second topic for today. And then we're going to end it, as always, how do we integrate it into our culture? So how do we create what I like to call a shared vocabulary or a clarity glossary? So you're going to want to stick through all the way to the end. We'll keep it short. We'll keep it practical. And most of all, we're going to keep it value added to you, our listeners out there in the Go Be Great community. All I'm asking, do me a favor, click on that subscribe button, find it, share this episode with those who you think may have a clarity challenge. I won't say problem because I have a lot of problems. A challenge, and most of all, give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing. It means a lot. I read all of those. So thank you very much. One of the things I want to start off with before we get into these 10 words is, I think vague language is that silent killer in our organizations. What really delays projects. I see it a lot impacting projects, which is work. I see it a lot create frustrations when we begin to assume the intent that somebody else meant and we don't go through clarity. And it just really breeds this culture of confusion. And when people are confused, when I'm confused, like I don't really know where I'm going. And when I get confused, I get frustrated. That's probably the next emotion, feeling that comes out of that confused state. So how do we, as really leaders out there, business owners, entrepreneurs who are getting our teams going, or maybe have a small team. This applies to one-on-one communication or one-on-many communication. And these 10 words that I'm fixing to unlock for you, we're going to go through each one, and I'm not going to specifically talk about each one because I think once we start, you're going to get exactly where we're going. And you probably have used some of these words this morning or this afternoon, or, when you're listening to this podcast, whether it's through text, emails, or even just our verbal communication that we give. And the first one is ASAP, as soon as possible. That word, I think, is most used in at least my vocabulary. It's like, when can you get it to me? ASAP. When do I need to have that done? ASAP. Hey, John, when do I need to show up for work? ASAP. And as soon as possible, like that is depending all on when it's possible. The word possible is, okay, it's possible for me to get ready in 5 minutes, show up to work, whatever that looks like. Some people, they take 30 minutes to get ready. That's what's possible to them. So that's our first one, ASAP. Second one, soon. When can I get that? Soon. How soon can you be there? Even in the question, how soon can you be there? Those are vague words. That's the second one. Later, I'm just going to run through these and then we can talk about each one of them. Later, kind of, right? Kind of. How do you like that? Kind of. Maybe. We even use these words even when I'm was asked to go, what do I want to eat for lunch? It's like, yeah, do you feel like, sandwiches? Do you feel like maybe pasta? Kind of. What does that mean? Maybe. Hopefully. That's a word that I throw around quite a bit. Let's touch base. This is a really good one. We're going to talk about why that's vague, because some people are like, that's not really vague. Let's touch base. That means something, right? We'll see. The contracted will, we will see. Whenever. Nope. When do you need this? Whenever. And then the last one, at some point. So some of these are words, some of these are phrases, of course, as we went through there. But those are the 10 words that we're going to eliminate. I write them on a sticky and I put them on my computer screen. I write them on a sticky and I have them in my offices. I've learned that those words, what happens? What do they lack? Okay, John, because all 10 of them have this thing in common. 3 things. They lack time, they lack ownership, and they lack outcome. So time, ownership, and outcome. Time, how fast. Ownership, who's going to do it. And then outcome, what needs to be done. And there's probably more words out there. I just identified these first 10 that I use quite a bit. Even talk to you in the podcast, and I try to eliminate them from even as I'm speaking, because as we normally speak, that's how we write. And when we're writing, whether it's an email or an IM, that vagueness can really create that confusion. Why? Because they lack time, ownership, and outcome. So one of the things that I want really for us to take out of these 10 words is how we are using them. Now, I'm not saying I've completely eliminated these words, because I continue to still use them. I used them this morning. However, in order for us to become better communicators, that's the whole entire theme of this season, season 21, is how do we communicate better? How can we communicate better? Really, it starts with our one-on-one communication, and then it builds from there into our team, one-to-many, or maybe, as we move up in the organization, maybe we're communicating up. And as we're communicating up, we definitely want to make sure that we get rid of these vague terms, because they're all about, time, outcome, and really commitment or ownership. Who's doing that? So that's what I want us to do for this application here. That's our practical application. Take a look at your last 5 pieces of communication. And it can be in emails, it could be text messages, or you can even think back to your conversations, which may be a little bit harder, but definitely in your text messages, instant messages, or your emails. Look back. How many words, or how many of these 10 words are in those pieces of communication? That's where we're going to start. And then I want you to think, all right, okay, did that word or words or phrases create a delay? And a delay could simply be another email back to you or another instant message back to you. Like, okay, what do you mean by ASAP? Or what do you mean by kind of, right? How do you like this report? How is this report? Give me some feedback on this report. And you reply with kind of, or let's touch base. Well, when are we going to touch base? And what are we going to touch base about? So those are the things, the applications, get into those communications that you've sent. You probably sent way more than 5 communications this morning, but look back, or this afternoon, it's morning that I'm recording this, but what can we do better by clarifying those 5 words? And that's going to be our next topic that we're going to talk about. Now that we've identified the 10 vague terms and why we've explained why they're vague, let's get into, how by eliminating vagueness, it doesn't mean that we eliminate our empathetic way we like to communicate, or kindness, if you want to put a feeling to that. What happens is we gain clarity. And communication is a fine line, because we don't want to seem like we're telling people what to do, we're directing people what to do. But by adding clarity, what we're doing is we're alleviating the confusion, which in turn takes out that frustration piece. So if you come across as being very directive, because I had some people like that, if you come across like that, explain your why. Explain why you're being very direct. And then outside of that, then they're going to be like, oh yeah, okay. And it could go simply like, I am being very direct around what time, what the outcome needs to be, and who needs to own this action or actions within the project to reduce vagueness and increase clarity for you all to, understand really what's going on. And we'll talk about a great question to end a meeting with as we get into this next section, because now we're going to talk about replacing those vague terms with measurable, just measure, how we measure whether it's an outcome, whether it's ownership, or, in the end, whether it's time. And we'll talk about calendar bound. I used to use the word time bound, but I like to use the word calendar bound. And you're going to find out here in a little bit why. So this is all about turning a word like soon to something that's measurable, like by Thursday, 3 p.m. And yeah, that's time bound, but also it gives a day, could be this Thursday, if you even want to get more specific, by 3 p.m. Eastern or Central Time. I work with teams all across the world, all across, different time zones here in the United States. So that's another clarifying, not just by Thursday 3 p.m., but Thursday 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Central Time. The world likes to revolve around Eastern Time. Those Eastern folks always, think that that's the only time zone, but there's 4 other time zones within the United States. So the most important thing, take that soon, create clarity around when. And then the other one, let's circle back. I use this one a lot. So let's circle back. How can we create more measurable term from that word or that phrase? Let's meet by Thursday, or let's meet this Thursday for 15 minutes and talk about next steps. You see how that takes a term like let's circle back. Okay, when do we circle back? How do we circle back? Do you want a virtual meeting? Do you want me to come into the office? That sort of thing. So be specific there, how you want to circle back with that individual, how you want to circle back with that team in order for things to continue to move forward. So there's no vagueness behind, because that's the key here. Get rid of all that vagueness around really what people start assuming when we use these words. And then the last one, I will complete the first draft by close of business on Friday. And again, close of business can be seen as a vague term because everybody's close of business may be different. The schedules, especially if you're working with employees who, again, are in different time zones, or maybe they're an early riser, so they get to work at 6 and they work their 8-hour-ish day and they're gone by 2:30, or they get in at 7, 3:30. I roll in the office around 8, so my day ends about 4:30. But you can see that's 3 hours of difference when I say close of business. So define what close of business means. The way that the technique that I like to teach on this, I didn't come up with this technique, but it's a solid technique that I like to teach, is called the 3C rule for clear communication. The first C is complete, the second C is concrete, and the third C is calendar-based. So complete. Did you complete the communication? As I mentioned earlier, 3 p.m., that could mean, did we mean Eastern Time, Central Time, Mountain Time? What time did we mean? So I need to complete that communication. And complete could also mean the question of, hey, is there any other details that you need to know to, move forward on this project? That could be a simple completion to the statement or the communication that you're trying to get across. And the reason why we complete it is because it's that feedback. So we're getting feedback. It's either going to be a yes, or it's going to be a no, or it's going to be like, yeah, John, could you go over that second part of that project? What exactly are you expecting, right, from us? What are you expecting to receive? So that's the complete part. And then concrete. Make sure, again, we're getting rid of those vague terms. So how can we use more concrete language? I like to call it plain language. We use acronyms all the time, and even acronyms can be very vague. So make sure that your concrete words spell out those acronyms, define any systems. Again, the systems piece, when we work across multiple systems, there could be different inputs and outputs. So make sure that it's concrete and we use plain language. And then last but not least, it's calendar-based. So give a date, give a day, give, a time. Make sure you again, back to I know I'm harping on, seems like the time zone, but that's a big difference. I've had some things fall through the cracks because I didn't specify a time zone, and that's a big deal. So those three things: complete, concrete, and calendar-based. 3 C's for clear communication. Just double check your message, even though, and I'll even run it through ChatGPT. Hey, how can I clear or make this message more clear or create more clarity? I do that with my emails. It's People don't read more than like 4 to 5 sentences in emails anyways. So make sure that you're very clear. You put what you want. Again, all of those things, right? What we talked about earlier is time, ownership, and outcome. Those 3 things in the top 4 to 5 sentences of your email, in the subject line of your email, those are things that we can do to improve our communication. So now let's make sure that our message matches the medium, because I explained this earlier. It could be nonverbal communication. It could be verbal communication. It could be instant messaging, which is a whole nother really, do you punctuate your sentences and capitalize your words? Those are things that can, instant messages is very informal. And then formal communication could be what our emails look like. If you have a very formal email, if I'm emailing from my phone, it might not be as formal as if I was doing it from my computer, but we got to match the communication with the medium. That's what I'm talking about, the channel of communication. You could also call it that. So we're going to build this shared vocabulary within our teams, and each team can have a different clarity glossary. That's what we're going to call it here, but we got to establish the norms. So we're going to define common terms. In common terms could be urgent, it could be words like done, and it could be words like priority. So when I say something is urgent, does that mean I need it done by the end of business day? Or does that mean I need it end of week, right? So take that term, talk about it within your team, and then define it. Come up with a simple definition. This doesn't have to be hard. You can spend 10 to 15 minutes in a team meeting just to go over words and terms that we throw around that can be confusing, and then put a definition to them. I have found, and this exercise, people are like, John, we're all adults here. I get that we're adults. And because we're adults, we have all of these years of experience with using words like done and urgent, and they can mean very, very different things. That's why we're building this. What's the price of not doing it? The price of not doing it is using words like done and urgent and then missing a deadline or missing out on a sale, right? That's the price of not doing it. So clarify those kind of terms. Priority, like when I use the word priority, this is a priority. Does that mean it's the number one priority? Does that mean it's like the top 5 priority? Does that mean we need to get it done within the next 90 days in this quarter? I don't know. Priority. That's a great word to sit down and say, okay, team, when we use the word priority, this is what it means. So your clarity glossary is going to be the application for you to begin to build in these words within your culture of your organization. And one of the things that I really need to stress, and this starts with us, it starts with us modeling clarity. So as we are in meetings, we want to make sure that we are modeling clarity. If somebody says something that we're unclear of, let's ask a question. Hey, John, that last statement around the project deadline or implications to why the project may miss a deadline, can you go over that one more time? I wrote down a couple notes. I just want to make sure I captured everything. Just by us doing that, what that does is it allows everybody else, like, okay, if John's confused, I'm confused too. So now I don't feel so stupid, right? I mean, those are the types of things people say to themselves, because if everyone's sitting around the room nodding their head around the table, nodding their head, or on the Zoom call, nodding their head, what happens is nobody wants to speak up in fear of maybe, not looking like they don't know what's going on. I have that fear as well. So we're going to start by modeling asking clarifying questions. And you heard me give an example. Another example is, does anyone need specifics on this project or anything that we talked about today? Well, see, there I go. Anything. I would be very specific on project X that we talked about today before we can move forward. And then just sit back and listen. Go around the room even. I'll even ask. I'll even go individually and say, okay, especially if you got multiple, things working. People are maybe taking ownership of multiple parts of the project. Go around the room. It's okay to spend that extra 5 to 10 minutes to gain clarity before you leave the meeting to go on, because a lot of times you get off the meeting and you're IM and somebody said, okay, I heard John say this. What exactly did he mean? They're like, I don't know what he meant. And then what? And then you got to talk to me again and ask me exactly what I meant. Just get it out in the meeting, because if you have that same question, I guarantee you there's somebody else that probably needs more clarity around that. And maybe it's just how we communicate. It could be a busy day. We could be rushed. Our mind could be on our next meeting. There could be something else going on outside of work. So even the best communicators, we all need reminders. All right. I hope that this episode really unmuddied the water for us as we talked about those 10 terms. That's a big takeaway for me. I keep them on a sticky. I always try to look at my emails and pull them out. Then we talked about, now replacing those vague terms with measurable words, with measurable to get that outcome that are calendar based. We talked about the 3 C's. A big thing for me that I always take out of that is, whenever I am in a meeting, to make sure to take a pause and clarify anything that I may have missed or didn't explain very well. And then last but not least, modeling. It starts with us. That's how we build it in. That's how we create this culture of really high performers and make sure that we are doing the best that we possibly can to get people to do what they need to do. Because in the end, vague language, it's not neutral. What it does, it's expensive. It costs us time, it costs us trust, and it costs us traction. So the fix is simple. Banish all of those blurred phrases, lead with clarity, because when your team knows exactly what done means, they're going to move faster, and they're going to move faster with more confidence. I believe in you. Go be great. Talk to everyone on the next episode. Bye-bye.